Okay, welcome back to Rooted and Rising, the podcast where we are sitting in the in between moments this season. And I'm your host, Chioma. Today's guest is someone I know quite well. Jason and I actually worked together at Global Communities, where he actually built a reputation as one of our sharpest water and sanitation experts in the room. But Jason's story today isn't just about water, sanitation, and hygiene. It's about transitions. As a father, as a husband, it's about loss and a loss that a lot of us felt this past year, and also how he found his way to something new. So, Jason, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you, Chioma. It's great to be here. Nice to see you again. And
No,
think often
it's
of
been a while.
times we spent working together at global communities. Yeah.
I know we saw each other every day for like 2 years. So funny. And I think you're actually the first person I'm having on the show that actually worked with me. So
Oh, that's cool.
I know. So this is a first too. So yeah, let's start at the beginning. I guess tell the people about yourself. What's your background? Where you from? Childhood,
Yeah.
that stuff.
Yeah. So my name is Jason Brooks. I grew up mostly on the East Coast in Virginia, rural Virginia, kind of a typical kid growing up in rural Virginia until I was in my teen years when my parents moved overseas, first to France and then to West Africa, where I ended up graduating from high school in Cote d'Ivoire after spending some time in Burkina Faso and Mali. And that kind of sparked an interest in international travel and international work for me.
Mhm.
Came back to the States and met my wife, who was also very interested in international travel. And a funny story, 10 days after we got married, which we got married very young, we were actually still in undergrad. 10 days after we got married, we moved to first to Russia and then down to the Ukraine to teach English.
Wait, I didn't.
And
Hold on. I did not know you lived in Russia.
yeah,
Did you know this?
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So, and honestly, that kind of started my not very maybe traditional route into international development work.
Okay.
It developed more as a function of experiences that I had had than any training at that point. And one opportunity led to another after I finished undergrad. My wife and I actually went to a position. We had our I guess our son was about 2 years old at the time,
Mhm.
working in Azerbaijan in in humanitarian um, assistance. So we're working with refugees there. And at that time, I was very much a generalist, just doing project management. I really didn't have a lot of experience. I got the job because precisely we had lived and worked in Russian speaking countries. And
Yeah.
frankly, at the time, they were rather desperate for people to go. You have to also understand that this was early days of even email. So,
Mhm.
you researched other countries by going in to the encyclopedia. Yeah,
I know.
that's
I was
not
like, you have to go to like a library and pull out this huge book.
yeah, no,
It's
it
about it.
totally. And so when you're looking for someone to go and, you know, do this frontline work
Yeah.
somewhere and you meet someone, they're like, "Oh, we spent time in Russia and Ukraine, not too long after the fall of the Soviet Union." Um, I just happened to meet somebody and they said, "Hey, we're really looking for people to do basic, just basic project management in a large program." It was a USDA program.
USDA
Provide
is the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Yeah, yeah. So they were providing food to internally displaced people after the Azerbaijan Armenia conflict back in the day. And that's how we got our start in international development. And
Okay.
yeah, I mean, pretty interesting history for a kid from rural Virginia. At a time when you really, honestly, I didn't know much about the world.
Mhm. And I guess I have a question there. So if you move to, you mentioned a lot of West African countries as a teenager.
Yep.
I moved here as a teenager from Nigeria, and I know how
Uh-huh.
that's kind of jarring for me. So how was it for you moving reverse, right? Like being a white kid moving to
Yeah.
West Africa. You probably didn't speak French, at least at the time.
Well,
That like
yeah, yeah. I'll be honest with you. The jarring event was moving from the US to France. So my parents were actually doing language school in France.
mm,
So they were, going back to school after a very long time being out of school, learning French right alongside, diplomats and other people who are really, high performing young students. It was a tough experience for them, but I was just going to the local French high school, which I started day one without a word of French. And
mhm,
it was a real challenge. I mean, honestly, it was all the things that people talk about with culture shock. You understand it, Chioma. Maybe some people listening will, that, just your world is just everything is different
yeah.
overnight. And to me, that was actually a much more jarring experience than eventually about a year and a half later moving on to West Africa, because I had known in my mind that that was the goal the whole time. That was what I was looking forward to, like, this great adventure, and it totally lived up to its name. Initially we moved around a little bit from Mali to Burkina Faso, ended up settling in Cote d'Ivoire. And, by that time, because we had lived in France, I did speak French. I was able to get around. I found everyone so welcoming, so accommodating, so eager and interested to know about us and our culture as I was trying to learn about their culture. It honestly, it was a dream come true for me. And I was with my parents, my parents and my sister, and we really got to do some incredible things. And I just had in my mind this whole time, even as a teenager, that I was getting to experience things that so few people, from where I'm from would ever experience. I lived in rural villages for a short period of time, got to visit different countries and different cultures and language groups and do language acquisition. And it was just, I thought, I want to do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I want to do this for us. I want to be thrown into the deep end again and again and just find out how generous and accommodating and incredible people all over the world are, because that was the experience that I had.
Mhm, mhm.
And to be honest, in some ways, it was not the best preparation for our first experience doing humanitarian work, in a very difficult situation with a lot of, war traumatized people. Um, it wasn't quite that wonderful, friendly reception that we had
This is
previous.
in Azerbaijan, right?
Yeah, by the time we got to Azerbaijan, listen, I was still only, gosh, it was right after undergrad. We'd taken a couple of years, call it 26 years old.
Okay.
And I'm, working in a program feeding 10,000 IDP families a month in really difficult circumstances. And there was a time there where I really said, wow, I had this incredible experience, especially in Africa. And going into humanitarian work, initially working in humanitarian response, it was not the same thing, because you're dealing with people in a very, very, very difficult situation while you yourself are trying to learn, new culture. It wasn't that, sit down and chat with people and learn about their lives. It was difficult stuff. It was food riots. It was kidnappings. It was, robberies. It was a lot of very, very tough stuff. And there actually was a period of time after Azerbaijan where I thought, this actually is not for me. This is not for
Yeah.
my family.
Yeah.
And we took some time off from that. I, went back to school, puttered around, doing a couple of different master's programs. And then it was in 2007. My kids were young, and I started thinking about that incredible time I spent as a teenager in Africa, in Cote d'Ivoire in particular, and started looking into going back to doing international development work. And it was at that time that we were recruited to go to Niger. So right in the center of West Africa, 80% in the Sahara Desert.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, nothing like the Cote d'Ivoire of my youth. I lived in Boaké, this, sort of on the edge of the savannah, beautiful green. Going to
Mhm.
Niger, to the desert,
Yeah.
to one of the least developed countries in the world on the Human Development Index, um, one of the hottest capitals in the world, a
Right.
really different experience. And honestly, it almost became a theme. You know, you
Is there a particular reason you went to Niger? Like, was it the project you were on or the work, or you just felt,
it
oh, let me
it
just
it
go here?
it ended up being one of these things again where, there aren't a lot of Americans that speak French and that have
Mhm.
experience in French West Africa.
It's true.
And I'll tell you, over and over in my life, that ended up being something that really helped me a lot, being bilingual, having those young experiences in other cultures.
Mhm.
It sort of gave people a confidence that if we were really dropped into the deep end in different situations, that we could sort of make it work.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a good thing. And it wasn't always a great thing in other ways because I often found myself way, way out of my depth.
Mhm.
And, it almost kind of became how might you say, a career skill to be adaptable.
Right.
um, I often have felt like through my career, I'm not so much an expert as I am a person who can be dropped into a situation and try to connect with other people who have expertise
Mhm.
and elevate their voices and their skills and maybe bring attention to what they're doing. And, going back to Africa and spending those 5 years in Niger, a very different environment than the one I lived in as a teenager in West Africa. Um, it was a tough experience in many ways just because of the nature of the work, the nature of the environment there.
Were you
But it
with your
also sorry?
were you with your wife in Niger?
Yeah, wife and 3 kids.
And 3 kids? Oh, wow, okay, so the whole family.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, whole family. And, we were working for an organization that had a very small presence and, 100% local staff and just, you know, very, very dependent on our local colleagues to, frankly, sometimes to keep us alive, to direct us, go here, don't go here. Here's how to negotiate difficult situations with governments. We lived through a coup while there.
Oh, wow.
Um, and then on the physical level, also it was really challenging. We had 3 medical evacuations for serious life-threatening illnesses with my kids. And, there are times when I thought, are we going to be able to continue to do this work, you know, and still actually preserve our health and and our safety, because it also increasingly became a risky place to be
Mhm.
during that time, as there was a lot of unrest in coming from outside the country. Actually, we had wonderful support from our colleagues in Niger, but there were a lot of um, foreign interests that were promoting some violent extremism, in the country at that time, doing kidnappings and things like that. And it was another opportunity to sort of roll with the punches, but also an opportunity to realize that once you're immersed in something, you it becomes your new normal.
Mhm.
And I don't know, there are probably some things about that experience that shouldn't have become the new normal in terms of taking risk, in terms of, but overall, a really, really rewarding experience that, again, another one where I thought, "How did I, a kid from rural Virginia, end up in this incredible place with these incredible people and these unbelievable circumstances?" Life is so strange.
Dynamic.
The dynamic, yeah.
Dynamic. So, how did you, I guess, was it from Niger that you started working in water sanitation and health? And
It
I
is.
guess frame it for the audience because there's a lot of people
Yeah,
that aren't public health experts or anything like that. And I don't want to focus too much on the over healthy side of it,
sure,
but what does
sure.
water sanitation and health actually mean to people who've never actually thought about where their water comes from or where it goes? Because there's a lot.
Yeah, so if you remember my background, was in project management. I was very much a generalist. I was the director for country operations in the country of Niger at that time for the organization I worked for. And we were doing education, a lot of education. We were doing emergency food distributions,
Mhm.
a little bit of agriculture, food security type projects. But the problem that we constantly face was lack of water. Niger is 80% in the Sahara Desert. Everything we tried to do required water, which just wasn't available. There was, in all of the rural areas, there was a shortage of water. Where water was present, it often was not safe and healthy for people. So
Mhm.
one of the many times in my life that I sort of kind of had to look at the situation I was in and think, how can I adapt to it? Was I decided I was going to learn how to drill water wells and to lead a water and sanitation program. And honestly, we just started from scratch with the knowledge that we had, working with our local colleagues. Um, And it was actually after that that I decided to go back and get my master's in water and environment as a result of that experience. But I should tell you, it wasn't just the needs that we saw around us in the country. One of my children almost died from a drug-resistant kidney infection, which they got from basically the sanitary conditions that we were living in. When the dust is contaminated with fecal matter because there is not adequate sanitation for people, every surface is potentially transmitting disease. And that was evident, in the number of children dying every day there in Niger, children under 5, children of our friends that we knew. And that that propelled us forward. But I tell you, there's nothing like being hit right in your own family, in your own home. My youngest child, who was only a little over a year old when we moved to Niger, almost died as a result of those same conditions that our friends and neighbors were living in. And, I didn't have the resources, I didn't have the knowledge. And I just said, look, there's a need, something needs to be done. Um, somebody has somebody has to do something. And I just started trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
And we didn't get everything right in the beginning. um, but I am proud that we partner with a lot of communities to work on their water sanitation hygiene conditions, and that I believe there are a lot of people today that are living better lives because of what we did there. But, it wasn't without personal cost. Even at the time that we returned to the US, my youngest, who had suffered that drug-resistant kidney infection, was not completely recovered. Thank God. They are at this point are now a almost 21-year-old healthy young adult.
Mhm.
But, it was touch and go there for a while. And, sometimes you feel drawn to something, and sometimes you get thrown into it.
Right, right. And that's true. And I guess thinking about all of this, you have this expertise, you've had all this experience. So a little bit outside of the title and the technical expertise, who is Jason Brooks? Like, tell us about you as a husband, as a father, and how does that show up alongside the career?
You know, I don't know. I'd like to think that this was something static,
Mhm.
that it had always, I'd always understood it. It always been the same. I've always said that I was a husband and father before anything else. Um, but I mean, even that, there are transitions in life. My kids are grown now. Um, I think for me, as I look back over my journey, maybe the one constant, whether I've been working in the US or in different places around the world, my highest ideal has been to be a humanitarian,
Mm,
um, a person who believes in both the the potential and the value of people, but also recognizing that problems are both human driven and they can only be resolved through human intervention. You know,
yeah.
that humans hold both the potential for great devastation and destruction and also potential for the most beauty and creation and connection.
Mm,
And to me, being a humanitarian means believing in that,
right.
that you can invest in things all you want. You can do things, you can build things, but that people are ultimately both the problem and the solution.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
and that you have to invest in people. And that's what being a humanitarian means for me is wishing the best for my fellow human beings,
Mhm.
um, wishing to be counted among their number of people struggling to do better and to be better, and
Right.
ultimately believing that that's the only solution and the only goal really worth working for. That's kind of what defines me in terms of my motivation and my principles.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so important. And after all of these years, I guess is there a specific moment or person or a community that has reminded you why this work is so important, especially on the hard days? Um, or, do you think back to your time in Niger, or has there been a time after that?
You know, it's interesting. I was discussing this with a friend of mine who recently contracted very is he's being treated. He's having chemotherapy now for cancer, and that kind of thing produces a lot of reflection. He's my oldest friend, and we often talk about. And he did similar work to the work that I was engaged with all those years. And when I think about him, and I think about all the thousands of lives potentially that he literally provided life-saving assistance to people. He would say it's the individuals who you mentored, the people that you saw,
Mhm.
that you invested in, that really stick with you. um maybe maybe a younger person who you encourage to pursue their dreams and their goals. And I know it sounds like kind of a platitude or something,
Yeah.
but honestly, my and I don't know if I've ever told him this. I have a good friend. He's a young man from Zimbabwe,
Mhm.
and I hired him out of undergrad to work in a program that I was managing in Mozambique. And really sharp young guy, just amazing young guy. But at the time, he did not speak Portuguese very much. He had just moved to Mozambique to be near his parents, who were university professors. And I said, I'm going to take a chance on you and I'm going to hire you. But my condition is I'm going to be visiting Mozambique in 3 months. If you cannot carry on a conversation in Portuguese with uh, the local plumber
Mhm.
working on this water project,
Mhm.
I'm not going to be able to continue employing you.
Mhm.
And I mean, to be honest, it may have been like a little bit of a cruel thing to do. I don't know.
Yeah, just it's a little
So,
cruel.
he no, he was already, making his first steps. He was already getting there. And this
Uh-huh.
guy was so sharp. And 3 months later, I went to Mozambique and he already had his undergrad in engineering and was working with the project and he was amazing. It was not just was he doing great with Portuguese, he was in with the community and I mean he was he was already a fixture. He was already a leader in his own right and I got to see him grow. He went back and did his master's in water at my alma mater. I wrote his letter of recommendation to get into school. He graduated. He'll probably be starting his PhD soon. And honestly, of all the things that I've done, I think that's one of the things that I'm proudest of. Um, the idea that I maybe played a small part in helping someone
Achieve.
become what they wanted to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
And he'll far surpass me in his
Yeah.
career. I mean,
Yeah.
he'll he's smarter, he's more capable, he's better positioned, he's the right person to do the job where he's doing it.
Mhm.
And that's everything to me. Um
Yeah.
that that's what stands out and that's what I talk about when I talk with my former colleague there from our days back in Azerbaijan. We talk about the people that we worked with, that we mentored, young people who now have become leaders in their own right.
Mhm.
That's that's what I'm proud of. That and to me, that's also the essence of being a humanitarian as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the way you're kind of framing mentorship as a way to give back, but also I think mentorship can also be two ways, right? I think
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, like you learn something from him and he's learning something from you. And I think that that's something that's so just so important in general. So I wanted to talk about the last year-ish, year plus now.
Wow, what a year and a half. Yeah.
What a year and a half. Let's walk back to when you first realized that some things were going to be changing and not just affecting your job, but I think your job is the immediate thing, right? Because
Yeah.
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 And what did that moment feel like for you when you realized that USAID was going to be dismantled and it was going to touch you directly?
You know, I mean, in the beginning, it just started with, in the beginning, it just started with anxiety, like what's going to happen? Can it really be that bad?
Right.
Am I overreacting?
Yeah,
I
I
think
remember
it's
we were all on teams like, what's going on? What?
what do you think is gonna happen? Do you think they could is it really possible? Could this really happen?
Yeah,
And
it's
then
not. I can laugh about it now. It was not laughing about
yeah, it was not funny at the time, you know, um, and to say I've had the incredible privilege of working with great humanitarians my entire career, but I felt like I worked with like a dream team at Global Communities. I mean, Global Communities, honestly, I can't say enough about as an organization in terms of like the professionalism, just like the level, the dedication of people. And to think that people had dedicated their lives to doing something and that someone could come along and just wipe it away overnight, just out of, just seemed like pure malicious, malevolence and with no concern for how it was affecting some of the best people I've ever met.
it.
It was crushing. It wasn't just, it was a loss of faith almost in humanity. I mean, to think that, there are many things that my country has done that I'm not proud of. Even some of the good things that we've done, we haven't done it in the right way.
Right way, yeah.
But among the few very good things that I think have been done, some of the foreign assistance and development programs that we worked with, helping women's cooperatives in Guatemala, food security in southern Madagascar, one of the poorest regions in the world,
Water
and to think that
sanitation,
comment,
rural balance.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, and that somebody could come in and say, "This has no value.
Yeah.
It's gone,"
Yeah.
was to say it was devastating really doesn't cover it. And then the fact that people who had maybe always done this face potentially losing their jobs. I mean, the amount of anxiety and part of the story that you know, Chioma, as well, is that I'd only been at Global Communities about a year and a half. And previous to that, after working 20 years in the same organization, I had lost my job there.
I remember
And
that.
I had been without work for 18 months before I started at Global Communities.
Yeah.
And and I had just refused to go outside of humanitarian work. I wanted to do this work so badly that I hung on until I found that position.
Mhm.
And it was like a lifeline to me to come to Global Communities. I was so proud to work there and so impressed with my colleagues. And then for it to go away like that. And, you know, and I mean, it may sound like I'm gushing a little bit here, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. I knew that our supervisors, the people making the decision, were doing everything possible to hold on.
Mhm.
I mean, they were trying to find ways to keep us employed against an ever mounting realization that it was all about to come crumbling down.
Yeah.
At one point, I started doing a little bit of consulting on the side while I went part time, and then it seemed like we might get a little resurgence there for a while, and then it fell apart again. And it was just a feeling of depression,
Yeah.
um, loss and depression and just hopelessness too. And I, in many ways, was so much in a better place than some people. There are people. I think about my colleagues who worked in HIV/AIDS. you
Mhm.
know, who worked in programs that didn't necessarily have an analog outside of humanitarian work. You're, or even take it further than that. You think at the same time a lot of people from the State Department were being recalled, and
Yeah.
it's like, if you lose your job being a U.S. ambassador, it's not like you can go be an ambassador for
Yeah.
another. Like, what's the alternative?
Yeah, like, what else are you gonna do?
What else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And, you know, and at the same time, you're looking at your colleagues, you wonder who's gonna go next, who's gonna stay. Um, it was a time of tremendous anxiety and turmoil.
Yeah.
Um,
I know for me, I would oscillate between sadness, anger, sadness,
yeah,
um,
yeah.
for weeks after everything happened. And I wonder, like, for you, what did that look like for you and your family also? Because I feel like I remember you were the sole breadwinner.
Yeah, yeah, and in addition to that, we had only moved to the West Coast to California, just a few years earlier, and, I had been working remote. I had not worked in an office since, like, before COVID.
Yeah,
S
yeah.
so, I mean, it had been years, and I had not worked let me see, even well before COVID, I had not worked full-time
Mhm.
in an office since, like, oh my gosh, like 2018 maybe. And I also had never it had been a long time since I had had to go out. Like for instance, when I lost my previous job working in humanitarian work, I knew that I would be looking for another job in humanitarian work.
Mhm.
The problem was now there was nothing left in humanitarian work. I mean, the UN was still there. World Bank was still there. But the truth is,
There were so
looking at
many
the
people looking though at the
oh
same
my gosh, like
Yeah,
30,000 people all of a sudden
yeah,
on the job market
yeah,
looking for a ever decreasing amount of positions. And in addition to that, those positions were going to go to people with the most flexibility to move,
exactly.
the most flexibility to take a pay cut, you know, um, I even briefly decided whether I needed to take short-term work overseas away from my family, which I don't know how I would have done it, but it's like, what am I gonna do? And, it was devastating. And the if there was any positive about it, there was quite a sense of community during that time, though.
Yeah.
I remember reaching out to friends who worked at USAID at the time, who worked for other organizations. But I mean, even within global communities, even, we were rooting for each other.
Mhm.
And it felt really good. I mean, we were all angry that this was happening. We were all hurt. But I mean, I felt like I worked with like the best, most promising people in the world, people who had unselfishly dedicated their lives to the humanitarian endeavor. And I thought, if these people, if this can happen to these people, if these people can't get jobs, what is the world coming to? It was an existential crisis.
Yeah. 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 And I think even though we're still kind of in the crisis, but I think people have slightly not moved on, but everyone's just trying to find the next thing, right?
Yeah.
And, thankfully you were able to find a role of, somewhat faster than a lot of people. What do you think made the difference? And I don't know, how much of that do you credit to maybe preparation versus timing
Oh
versus
God.
luck versus anything else?
Yeah, I've got to be honest with you. There are far better, more employable, smarter people than me that still haven't found a position. Um, People I still talk to that are still struggling to find it. I was fortunate for one simple reason. Um, I I had a broad ranging degree. Okay, water and environment,
Mhm.
and the truth is, I really water was my technical expertise, not environment. But at least my degree said environment on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Secondly, I live in an area with a lot of job growth and a lot of demand. I don't know what it would have been like to living in Washington, DC at that. Well, I do because I talk to my friends who live
Yeah.
there. I mean, to be in the epicenter of all those layoffs when everything was centered around Washington, DC for the most part. I mean, basically DC, Boston, I mean,
Yeah.
all of the NGOs,
Yeah.
yeah, just very few places. And those places were inundated.
That's one thing I'm glad that I wasn't there physically at
Yeah.
the time.
No, it was, I have close friends who had to sell their homes
Yeah.
in DC because the prospect of getting a job just was not there. Um, The the other thing is, like I said, I live in inland, Southern California. It's an area of a lot of job growth, and also I live fairly far out,
Mhm.
so, um, and I guess to go ahead and give it away, I literally just started looking for anything with environmental or water in the name, the
Mhm.
way you search for jobs on
Yeah.
LinkedIn and all the all of the, all of the platforms. And lo and behold, a job opens up 20 miles from me for environmental director
Right.
for for a tribal government.
Uh-huh.
And I looked at the job description. I believed it could possibly be a good fit, but I had my doubts, to be perfectly honest. I thought that what we did, Chioma, was pretty niche in a way
I thought so too. Yeah.
because of the international aspect, because we
Yeah.
were so focused internationally. I
Yeah.
mean, even at our time with global communities toward the end, we did start looking at more
Well,
domestic
that's the word. Yeah.
work, but
Yeah.
it was coming along very, very slowly.
Yeah.
And actually, it was a benefit to me that I had started looking into that because I knew a little bit about what was going on.
Mhm.
Well, it turns out, and this would be sort of maybe my answer to your question. It turns out what I do now is not that different than what I used to do. um, so I'm the head of environmental protection for a Native American tribe
Mhm.
that has a 35,000 acre reservation in Southern California. that happens to be near where I live. And so many of the things that I did every day in my job, working at global communities and the place I'd worked before that in international development are very, very similar
Or yeah.
to what I do now. And I don't just mean on the level of I look at funding solicitations, I write proposals, I do some management, some supervisory work. But if you can imagine this, um, back when I was just starting as a development worker, the number of times I used to go sit with the village council or the tribal council or, the regional or central
Yeah.
government. Literally, a big part of my job now is to go and meet with the tribal council of the tribe
Mhm.
to present ideas about protecting the air, water, land, environmental, and natural resources of the tribe. And it's called a tribal council because I work for a tribe.
So, question about that, because I know that the little I know about working in tribal communities is that they can be very insular. And you coming as a non-Native American,
Yep.
um, how are you able to cross that? I mean, it wasn't that, I mean, it's not that different from you working as you are and going to Niger or going to Ivory Coast or Ghana or anything, but how are you able to translate that ability to build trust in this new role?
Yeah. So I'll be honest with you. Yeah, it is in some ways there are greater challenges. Um, as a foreigner showing up in most of the places that we worked overseas, um, that natural hospitality that most cultures have towards people coming in from the outside. When you show a genuine interest
Mhm.
in what and in people's desires for their own development, it's incredible how people can embrace you in such an in short a short time. I
Yeah.
mean, it's probably the single greatest lesson of my humanitarian career. Um, it's funny. I used to, and I bet you've had this experience too, Chioma. When I used to get on an airplane here in the US to fly somewhere, overseas, that first leg when you're flying from your regional hub to DC or wherever it is, inevitably somebody turns to you and says, "Hey, where are you headed?"
Yeah.
And when you say Madagascar, people's eyes are like, "Wow,
Like, wow,
what
okay.
what in the world are you doing?" Or earlier in my humanitarian career, when I used to travel to some places that really people saw in a very negative light because of, war and really difficult situations. Either people would be like, "Wow, that's so wild," or people would be like, "Oh, aren't you afraid?"
Mhm.
I remember, there were times when I was traveling to places that there was an element of physical danger, and yet I wasn't afraid
Mhm.
because I worked with such incredible people. I knew that when I got off of that plane, my local counterparts were far better humanitarians than I am because they are living. They're
Mhm.
suffering often from the same challenge. If you're going into an earthquake situation, the
Mhm.
people that meet you at the airport, who are your local colleagues, they got hit by the earthquake.
Exactly.
you know, I'm just a guy showing up, with a little bit of outside expertise, most of which is in getting external resources. I'm
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
even a better technician than the
Yeah.
local people. I'm just the guy that maybe can help get some resources. So there's this natural welcome, and it
Mhm.
is different. It is different when you're going to a community just down the road from you that is historically marginalized, that has been the victim of a very intentional genocide of their culture, and you show up, and if you're like me from the majority culture, and you really wonder how are people seeing me? How are people thinking of me? And
Exactly.
what I can say is I just fell back on what I knew. I just fell back on what I knew. Um, Help me understand your situation. Help
Mhm.
me know how I can help with your priorities and your goals. And it seems like a universal, I don't know, looking back over the past 20 25, coming up on 30 years doing this.
Mhm.
When you sit down with people and you say, tell me what your life is like, tell me about your challenges, the doors open up. And if people believe you have a sincere and genuine interest, um, they'll let you in. They'll
Yeah.
let you in. And that's the case that I found here with the tribe. On the one hand, the tribe hires lots of people from outside the tribe because the actual number of tribe members is relatively small.
Yeah.
They have a lot going on. At the same time, I've been put in in a position of responsibility over the land. And one thing that is very, very, very important to the tribe that I work for, as I would imagine it is for all Native American tribes, is the land. That connection with the land is far greater than anything I've ever seen. A belief that the land is more. Um, there's actually a term that many of my Native American colleagues use when they refer to the plants and the animals. They talk about the plant and animal relatives.
Okay.
Um, they're not things. They're not inanimate things.
Yeah.
They are older, wiser relatives that are there to teach us about how to live and to how to be. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is incredible. I grew up in a very rural area. I was a very isolated actually as a kid. And I used to spend hours and hours and hours and hours alone out in the forest, just exploring and being with the plants and animals. And I always found it was like such a place of peace and learning for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I I feel really honored to be in this position. And, I just try to take the same principles that I always have. Number one, I know nothing. I am such an ignorant person when it comes to other people's lived experience. All I can do is walk in and say, I know nothing, teach me.
Mhm.
Secondly, is to say, not my priorities, your priorities. This is not about what I want. I mean,
Mm.
this is not my land. This is not these are not my people, literally. Um, Therefore, tell me what I can do. What are
Yeah.
your priorities? And I've been embraced in a way that's really heartwarming. And to be honest with you, I wasn't sure I would ever find outside of humanitarian work.
I think I did that.
Um, I was really afraid. I'll confess to you, it was one of my deep fears that I would never find work as meaningful that spoke to me as much as the humanitarian work that I did before. And this is different. There are differences.
Yeah.
Um, I don't travel around the world anymore. I'm
Yeah.
almost like here in my backyard. And then I got reminded by one of the tribe members the other day, it's not your backyard. It's our backyard. And I was
Yeah.
like, yep, another lesson for me. I'm
Sure.
living in somebody else's backyard.
Mhm.
But my job description includes protecting the air, land, water, and cultural resources of the tribe because those natural elements, those resources, they're not just things to be exploited, they are cultural resources.
Mhm.
And I've been here a little over a year. I am learning so much every day. And I I could not have predicted this transition.
Yeah. I
I
can imagine.
I really have my doubts that it would work out in the way that it did or that I would love it as much as I do. And I don't know. I think it's restored a little bit of my faith in humanity, a little bit of my joy that was kind of, I don't know. I felt like the air was sucked out of me there for a little while. I was like, how could so much good be undone so fast?
Yeah.
And then I don't know. I realized that whatever is exterior and whatever is superimposed it is always temporary. Um, I have no doubt that our colleagues, Chioma, working out in the field, our friends like Betty in Kenya, our friends in Madagascar, it's a lot harder for them to do their work without
Yeah.
the support of USA. There's less money, there's less
Yeah. There's
resources.
less money all around. Yeah.
At the same time, I'm confident they're still out there being the humanitarians that they always have been. And in my own way, I'm just trying to continue to being the humanitarian that I've always wanted to be.
Mhm.
I guess that's where I find myself today.
And what do you think is in that season, right? So let's say imagine you this time last year. What may have surprised you about your own resilience?
I think sometimes in a time of transition, we doubt that the lessons of the past are still going to be good for today.
Mhm.
Especially when your context changes so dramatically, when the floor drops out from under you. And I guess maybe the thing that I discovered is the things that had served me in good stead, um, halfway around the world and in remote communities, and they're still fundamental to who I am,
Yeah.
and they're still fundamental to my grasp on reality, on what counts, on what matters. Maybe that's it.
Yeah. And that's actually whatever you I think what I'm hearing is um yeah, the things that may have kept you going in the good times are still the same things that are going to hold you together when things are rough.
Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, as a father that, fatherhood, provision, all of those things. Specifically, how has that maybe changed the way you think about risk and security and stability?
Oh, that's a tough one too, because it's so dependent on the phase of life that you're in
Mhm.
to and I mean, probably my one reflection, I'm 52 years old, is that life has so many different phases and things do look different in different places. When my kids were young, uh, I had so many worries, about, for example, their education. It's a big thing on my mind, especially when we were traveling around the world. And, will my kids find good schools? Will they find friends? As you get older, you worry about, will you be around to help your parents? Um, what about when your kids, become adults? Will you be around for potentially for grandkids one day? And I think that you don't want to be driven by fear,
Yeah.
but I think it is important to know what's essential to you,
Hmm.
to know what's worth sacrificing for and what you would not sacrifice. And I'll be honest, I haven't always gotten that one right. Um, I'll tell you one of the things I regret, that 5 years in Niger was one of the hardest times of our life, just physically and mentally. The load that we carried, my wife and I worked together, our kids were younger, and it felt like everything rested on us because
Hmm.
we had an office that had to be funded. We had employees that had whose salary had to be paid. We had projects that had to be completed. And when I look back on now, I don't look back and wish that I had worked harder or that I've been more successful. I wish I'd taken more time with my kids during that time. Um, and I think the thing that I'm trying to internalize even now is if you feel fearful,
Hmm.
if the panic starts to set in, ask yourself what's important. Ask yourself what is essential, and realize that many of those things are still going to be there,
Yeah.
even if you today don't have the job you want, even
Yeah.
if you're not sure where you're going to work tomorrow. Your kids aren't going to stop loving you. Your family's not going to stop supporting you. Hopefully your friends are there. Um,
And I want to say this even applies, even if it's not job loss you're dealing with. Maybe you might be dealing with some other kind of loss. I think that that still applies, like knowing that the things that matter are still there.
yeah, and I think there are times I one of my main faults is probably that I'm an idealist. I'm kind of a person who I've known all my life I had to have a job I believed in, and
Hmm.
I had to believe it was doing good. I just I God bless the people that can go to a factory and pull a lever and push a button every day because we need those stable,
Yeah.
dedicated people, all those people we call essential workers and things during um God bless them because that's not me.
Hmm.
I quickly I quickly become disheartened. I need to feel like what I'm doing is matters.
Yeah.
At the same time, there may be a season in your life where you have to do things that are not going to tick all the boxes for you so
Exactly.
that you, you may not be realizing all of your ideals,
Hmm.
but you're still maintaining the essentials.
Hmm.
Until you can get back to that place where you have more freedom to choose, where you have more freedom to pursue the things that
Really want to
um, bring you joy and
enjoy.
fulfillment.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not every day. It wouldn't be called work if if it was always easy. And sometimes you just have to do the work. But
Yeah.
also, um, keep planning and hoping for the day when you're going to be back doing that thing that really feeds your soul deep down.
Yeah.
Transitions are inevitable. They
Yeah.
are so, and there's another one coming. That's the one sure thing.
That's true. That's actually a great point. Yeah. There's always another one. And if you could go back and talk to yourself this time last year, going through that loss, what would you tell that Jason?
I think I would say good things are coming. Focus on what's important. Don't stop being the person you want to be just because you can't do the things you want to do.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. Okay, so my last question, which is the question I ask all my guests, and I probably should have told you this before, but it's fine.
Okay,
What
surprise me.
what song do you think describes your life right now and why?
Oh gosh. This is obscure. This is obscure. Um, and it's gonna sound like sort of a more morbid
Oh no.
topic.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a folk song. Um, and it's called Peacemaker. And
Okay.
it's about the gun, which is gonna sound like a really strange reference.
Okay.
Um, the Colt Peacemaker was a revolver that they called it the gun that won the West, whatever horrible thing that probably means. But when you see all
Mhm.
those cowboy movies with the cowboy
The
with the
cowboy.
gun on his hip and all that,
Uh,
you know, maybe it was a Colt Peacemaker. And there's a song by a band called the Steel Drivers,
mhm.
and it talks about this steel, this metal that was dug out of the ground. It was made into steel and it was made into this gun. And it
Mhm.
says it has a terrible voice and a terrible job, but it says, if I don't deserve the credit, why do I get the blame? And the point is that piece of steel could have been anything. And even if after it was formed into something, it still could be used for a good or bad purpose. It's not the pressure that made it what it was the intention.
Tension. I see.
And I don't know even know why that song like, came to mind when you said that. There are probably so many things I could have said, but, you know, if you feel like life has molded you into something that's not what you envisioned, that you're playing a part that you don't wanna play, ultimately self-determination is all you've got. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Viktor Frankl. Man's Search for Meaning. One of the voted one of the 100 most consequential books like that past 100 years and all that.
Yeah.
But and he said this quote like many, 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 many different ways. But essentially, what he says is the last of the freedoms given to us is determine how we will react in any situation.
Mm,
To choose our attitude, to choose our reaction. And I don't know, that song says, the pressure can make you into a thing you don't want to be,
wow.
but it's your intention that determines the purpose that you'll serve.
Yeah. Wow. That was okay. I feel like this is a great place for us to stop because that was amazing. And I so agree because it literally speaks to me personally because I am in my transition period that I'm ready to get out of, but
It's coming.
but
Good
it's
things are
coming.
coming.
It's coming. But Jason, I really appreciate you being here today and trusting us with your story and sharing all your wisdom. I feel like the year and a half, 2 years that we worked together, like you're right, it was fun.
It was.
The work was great, but it was also fun. I think we learned so much from each other.
Absolutely.
And I think that was one of the things about our team is that we were always so open to learn and share. And there was no time I would ping Jason on Teams and say, "Do you know this, this, and this?" And not respond and be like, "I don't know. I may not know it, but I'll reach out to this person." And so, just always appreciate that about you being so open and giving, and very excited for this new role.
Thank you.
That it continues to be a place of growth and joy for you. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Chioma, I miss you. I miss you,
Aw,
all of our friends
I
back
know.
there.
I know.
And as they fan out over the world, I pray that they would be like seeds,
Yeah.
that those good humanitarians will find new places to lift up humanity,
Yeah.
as I see you have as well.
Trying to, trying to. Well, thanks for listening today, everyone, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Bye.
Bless you, my friend.